Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Let me just do a quick introduction. I'm Akash and I work as an ecosystem manager at Starkware. And joining us in today, we have the co founder and CEO of Paradigm and Paradex, where we would be exploring the intersection of Starknet scalability and Paradex advancement in the tech space. We'll also be discussing about how these tech shape the future of DeFi and user experience. And questions from the audiences will be taken at the last. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. So Anand, just before we dive into the discussion, could you just give us a quick introduction to Paradex?
Hi guys, my name is Anand Combs. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Paradex. Paradex is a decentralized exchange. We were founded sometime last year. It's been just under a year that we've been in production. We started out as a perpdex, but we have the vision has kind of evolved to being a full service DEX, with options, spot, futures, lending markets, etc. And our goal is to build basically the Binance on chain, right? It's like we the decentralized finance DeFi landscape obviously has grown pretty significantly since 2020, but we feel like the promise of DeFi, which was on-chain trading and on-chain everything, is still there's still a big gap between where we think the market should be and where it is today. So we saw this kind of opportunity to go out and build this promise that everybody's been kind of waiting for. But right now, most of the centralized exchanges have dominated market share and volume. And so Paradigm's mission was to basically bridge the gap between CeFi and DeFi, and by doing so, try and usher in kind of the new wave of the next wave of adoption on chain.
Right, got it. Thanks a lot. I think just to talk more about it. The user experience has always been an issue. So how do you think like Paradex as a whole has been redefining the user experience in DeFi, and how critical do you think this is for like the mainstream adoption?
Yeah, I think it's extremely critical. People talk a lot about user experience. I think talking about everybody says that the user experience in DeFi needs to be better, etc. But there's very few projects that are actually like walking the walk. Like they're talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. And a good example would be, so for example, let's say you go to a large centralized exchange like Binance, or Bybit or OKX, any of these large exchanges, right? A simple action such as you're able to go to these exchanges, deposit money in Bitcoin, and then use that Bitcoin to trade any of the large other instruments there. You're able to borrow from that Bitcoin, borrow against that Bitcoin, withdraw any currency that you sort of want. And that's a very seamless experience, right? In some exchanges, you can also leverage or borrow against your NFTs, etc. And so that's a very seamless experience where like you have this full product suite under one umbrella, and there's like seamless composability and very smooth flow between moving money from one to the other without having to jump margin pools and whatnot, right? Now, when but that's in CeFi, and part of the reason it's so smooth is because it's centralized and you have to trust people with your collateral. So it's much easier to build these kind of like very composable sort of flows because the control of the collateral is in your hands. Now, when you move to DeFi, you cannot make that assumption that you have control over the collateral because the collateral or your margin sits in an account, and only the user has access to that because they have their sort of private key because it's effectively their account is like their wallet, right? Now, under this assumption, everything becomes very constrained because if you want to like replicate that CeFi experience of seamless composability and workflow, to do that in under a setting where your collateral is locked and only the user has access to it, that's very challenging to do. And so yeah, when I talk going back to like walking the walk, I think we're one of the few dexes out there that is really like has come out and said that, hey, we're building, basically what will be the very first dex that will feature a product suite comparable to that of CeFi, where you can trade sort of like any instrument from a single account. So think of like trade anything. So trade spot options, futures, from a single account without having to sort of move margin pools. And you can do that by using any asset as collateral, right? And so this kind of like seamless composability and kind of seamless like workflows that you see in CeFi, we will be the first DEX that comes out, and in many ways we have already achieved that, but in a few instruments, but the full suite will sort of come in January, and so, but again, the whole this like communicating that this is what we want to do. A lot of people say that we feel like we're one of the few DEXs, if not the only, that has actually walked the walk and delivered on this experience. And a big part of why we were able to deliver on this experience is because of the underlying stack that we use, which is Starknet, right? So we are built on our own chain. We are the first ZK app chain in the world, and I think we're also when we are the first Starknet app chain. But a big reason, kind of, we went with the stack is the only reason you can do this like kind of like seamless composability is because of like the extremely heavy duty sort of engine that is powered by the Starknet stack, right? So
Right.
as of today, I don't believe there is any other stack out there, optimistic rollups or validity proofs out there that are able to do kind of the heavy lifting that you see that we are able to do, and that again is all thanks to the really like robust underlying framework that is the Starknet stack.
Right. And I think there's another key thing that's very like it's not been spoken a lot about, which is again native account abstraction. And I think it's very underspoken, and not a lot of people have been leveraging. And I think that's largely what Paradex has been leveraging and has been providing that seamless UX as well. Right.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
to
yeah. All those things out of the box is definitely true. But one of the things, so earlier this year with 4844 and with applicative recursion that sort of came after,
yeah.
just to give you some context about sort of where we were and where we are today and what that unlocks. So last year, this time, in October of last year, we were paying 8,000 gas per trade, right? Which is L1 gas. So it's extremely high, and at this point, it was extremely expensive for everyone out there, not just Starknet, because that was where the state of the world was, from a technology perspective. Today, we spend less than 100 gas per trade, right? So an insane sort of like improvement, and that has been largely been two things that has been powering that. One is when we moved to blobs, and Starknet writes to L1 directly, uses blobs. So do we, because we use the same stack. But two is applicative recursion, because once applicative recursion or block packing came about, we are now instead of packing transactions in the block, we're now packing proofs, and that basically has given us an enormous amount of runway. So what to give you again in terms of what that unlocks, it not only basically decreases like cost for us, which it already has, because fixed costs are now spread out across a very large base of transactions, but now because of this like cheapness, we can do extremely like more computationally intensive transactions. So for example, in terms of computational complexity, a perpetuals trade was basically we were doing something like 80,000 Cairo steps per trade. Now with options, that has increased almost to 250,000, right? And so in this time, we're like, okay, we're adding the number of markets. We're also increasing the complexity of the computational sort of intensity of each transaction itself. Starknet has still been able to kind of like deliver on this, right? Is because even though things are increasing almost non-linearly, we've still been able to sort of keep up with the pace of the demand, in terms of like the product demand, right? Yeah. And
Right.
that's been a big reason why we've been so. As of today, we will have perps. We have perps on 70 markets, plus we have options. Actually, today is the launch of perpetual options, which is a very big product for us. And spot will come in January.
Right. And it's a whole suite, as you said, exchange, asset management, and I think borrow and lending is also something that's on the timeline as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
Exactly. And it's not just borrow lend, but it's borrow lend using the same account that you're trading perps from, you're trading options from, you're trading spot from. This account basically factors in the offsetting risk or market risk from each of these things. It gives you the P&L sort of offsets, it gives you the margin offsets, and you're able to leverage your full collateral to basically trade, to borrow and lend, to deposit, etc. And that unlocks an insane amount of capital efficiency, which as of today, no DEX in the world has done.
right. Just at this point, I think whoever's tuned in over here, I think I would really highly suggest you guys to use Paradex and just feel what Anand is clearly saying, and not about words. Only when you experience the whole flow, I think that's when you truly understand how this totally works. And yeah. And also, I just went through the Medium article that was released recently with respect to
Mhm.
time as well. And I
Mhm.
just read about the introduction of XUSD address and
Mhm.
XUSD. So, how do you think this addresses the inefficiencies in collateral usage in DeFi?
Okay, so the Paradex ecosystem is basically three core components, and as we open up the chain for external developers to build, this ecosystem will grow. But as of today, it has basically three flagship, or three core financial primitives. One is the DEX itself, and kind of like the value proposition of the DEX is trade anything with anyone and using any asset as collateral, the stuff that we just talked about, right? All from one unified account. And that's kind of like this composability and seamless workflows is why people sort of will prefer this DEX over others, right? The other two components, one is the chain itself on which this the DEX is one application built on the chain. And over time, we will kind of like grow and open this chain up for other developers to kind of build on top applications that will basically share state with the DEX. But the third is our native, yield-bearing synthetic dollar. Now, what that does is effectively we have this primitive on Paradex where it's a vault, and this vault, it's a very simple idea. Anybody can deposit money in a vault, and they get like a depositor token as a receipt that, hey, you have money in this vault. Now, the nice thing with this vault is this vault basically inherits all the properties of the DEX. That means you can put in spot in the vault, you can put in perps, you can put in options. So you can have basically an end-to-end suite of investment management strategies or trading strategies or investment strategies inside this vault. And so if any depositor that's putting money into this vault basically is able to tokenize that exposure to that strategy, right? And so
Makes sense.
one strategy for the vault could be, for example, your long spot and your short perp. And so if you're doing that, you're basically creating a delta neutral position because if you heard of Athena is basically that. They basically go
Yep.
long spot. If you deposit money into that, it's long spot, short perp, and they collect the funding rate. And so the token that you get from this vault, we will now give this token. So this token has two properties. One is it will basically collect interest, because if you're long spot short perps, you're collecting the funding as interest. So it's basically yield bearing. And then the second property is that because it's a delta neutral token, Paradex as an exchange can recognize that token as a spot token. So we'll be able to use that as collateral in the exchange. And so what that does is, imagine if you have SUSDE in Athena, and instead you can now take that SUSDE, which you're already earning yield on, and you're
Yield
able
on
to
it. Yeah.
go deposit it into another vault. So basically, it unlocks yield stacking, or you can use it to trade. And so,
Right.
going back to your question about capital efficiency, of course, this ability to stack yield unlocks, basically gives you're able to do more with your money because your collateral isn't just sitting there not earning anything. It's earning the basis, plus you're able to leverage it as collateral in other places of exchange, namely the other vaults or as trading collateral.
Right. Makes sense. And just talking about all this collateral and the success of Paradex itself, and it's
Mhm.
processed right now, I think about more than 60 billion in trading volume since its
Roughly.
launch.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
roughly.
roughly, yeah. And so, what do you attribute to this early success?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a success yet. We have quite ambitious plans to, we do something like 80 to 100 million a day in volume today. But by centralized exchange standards, Binance trades 100 billion a day. So, compared to them, we're nowhere close to being a success. The moment we start to get above a billion or 2 billion or 3 billion, then I will say, okay, we have some elements of success, but the road is sort of very long.
Right.
And yeah, but ultimately, I think the little traction that we have so far, the 100 million a day or so, is because I think people are finally starting to see kind of how this vision fits together, the seamlessness of the platform, and of course the us coming out and telling the world what our vision is. I think that was a really nice thing as well, because we've seen our DAUs almost like 4x since last week, since we made that announcement, which has been quite amazing. But I think people are starting to, and of course the timing of the bull market, right? We've just started a new bull market. people, think this is an exciting project. They're seeing the sort of vision coming together. We just announced our token, so it's kind of a good time to be in Paradex right now. But this was not like 12 months ago when the market was like,
Right.
but that's the cycles of crypto, right?
Right. Just talking about Dime here again. I just saw your cheeky tweet on Twitter where you said you've got a lot of new friends joining up right after
Yeah.
the Dime token.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's. I was half joking, but I think it's as much of there's people that I haven't spoken to in a long time, but I think a lot of it is just people excited about
Yeah.
what we are building, and they want to learn more about what the vision is. If they read something, it's like, oh, I knew you were an exchange, but I didn't know that you guys were also have your own synthetic dollar, or you also are able
Right.
to build on your chain. So I think there was a kind of like an unlock happen in people's minds, because now we're not just another perps dex, right? We are much bigger than that, right? If you look at kind of like what's happening in the market right now, the
Yeah.
market is valuing kind of ecosystems plus a killer application. If you look at Hyperliquid, it's done really well. A big part of their value proposition is, oh, we are an alt L1 that's dubbed a Solana killer, but we're also a DEX, right? And so, like, when we
Right.
came out with our vision, and our vision has always been this, it was even long before Hyperliquid kind of went out publicly. Like, our vision was always that, like, hey, we are a chain ourselves, and at some point we will open to external developers. But the first app on this chain is the exchange, and that is the first thing we want to build. But then all of these things will be powered by the synthetic dollar, which is XUSD, right? And so I think when we finally came out and told the world that, I think a lot of people were like surprised, and that's where people were reaching out to me. And so I've been on kind of calls nonstop for the last 2 days. It's all been super positive, so I'm not complaining in any way, but just to kind of give you some context as to where
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
coming
Makes
from.
sense. Yeah. And there's one thing that I'm really excited about is once we have borrow and lending. For example, say that I'm able to borrow some tokens and be able to spend it through my card. Is some
Mhm.
Paradex card something on the line?
Could be, it's like I don't see. I mean, once you have the base infrastructure in place, all these other primitives that you're talking about, which are these more like last mile consumer type
Yeah.
primitives, those sit on top of foundational infrastructure and financial primitives such as lending and borrowing markets, multi collateral, spot options, futures. All those basic building blocks need to be built first, and then cards. Loyalty program, like all of these cool new things. I think they sit on top. But for one of those things, actually, since you asked, my vision is we focus on the core financial primitives right now, which is the
Hmm.
exchange, the XUSD, and the chain, and then something like what you just said, which is a like a consumer facing credit card application. I think that will be built on Paradex chain, right? So that will be built on the chain. It will share state with the DEX. It will have access to liquidity from our spot books, etc., from the lending pools, and it will be able to kind of like build using the primitives that we already have. But again, there's a
Right.
sequencing here to this. So our
Yep.
goal
Yep.
right now is to just build the building blocks, and then at some point when we kind of open it up, these true consumer applications will sit on top.
Right. And also, just as we spoke about the volume in terms of what Binance has been doing and what Padex has been doing, how do you plan on onboarding those new users from CeFi into DeFi space through Paradex? Is there like a timeline that you're looking at, or is there any community stuffs that you're working on, and how does this work? Yeah.
That's a very good question. That is the $1 trillion question, because every DeFi founder or every founder in crypto, wants to go after, or wants this, like, so Binance has what, 250 million odd registered users. If I were to guess, they probably have like 5 to 10 million daily active users. The other exchanges slightly less than that. But any founder in DeFi today is saying, okay, how can I get that slice of the pie? How can I move these users from CeFi to DeFi, right? If you look at Binance, it's a fantastic exchange, right? And so the switching costs for users are high. And so, it is a hard problem to solve into how to move people over. But fundamentally, I think when you're faced with a problem of switching costs, switching costs are a function of, okay, what exactly are the costs? If the user is locked in into a particular product and you want them to move, I think you have to do two things, or either of these things. Either you give them something different and therefore valuable, or you give them something way more valuable of the same thing. So, if, for example, if the utility, let's say a user is trading on Binance, and let's say we quantify the utility of that person trading on Binance. So let's say it's 100. Then, and if I'm saying, hey, I'm replicating Binance, but I'm giving you, then the way for me to move that person over is to give you 10 times of Binance, right? So instead of 10, I need to give 100. Now,
Right.
to build something 10 times more valuable than Binance is going to obviously hard, right? So therefore, a lot of founders you will see are focused on building things that are different because the cost in terms of building is lower, and so you attempt to kind of move people over by giving them something different. Now the question then that begs the question: what is the user getting when they come to CeFi? So a big part of the promise of DeFi is that you get to own the network, part of the network that you own it, right? So people come to farm the token and blah blah
Yep.
blah. I think that's a big part of this is people want to believe in the future, they want to participate in the growth of that, right? So that is sort of one. But number two, on the product side, a big way, like I said, is that we're trying to differentiate ourselves. Is, for example, if you look on our website, you've seen vaults. Binance doesn't have vaults.
Yep.
Vaults are like pure tokenized, kind of like on-chain investment management. If you go to Binance, you get copy trading. You can copy other people, but you cannot deposit in a vault that does everything, and somebody else sort of like deals with
Mhm.
that for you, right? We've built that. So again, staying on the kind of the differentiation, anchoring on differentiation. I think vaults is like copy trading 3.0, and so the user gets something different. And the second is products like perpetual options. So we have actually launched options today, but we're not launching dated options. Binance, all these large exchanges, they
Yep.
have dated options. We will be launching perpetual options, and we believe what perpetual futures did for futures, perpetual options we think will do for options. So again, it's on this like differentiation or anchoring on that, and we think perpetual options is a fundamentally better product, and we think users will come from that. So our goal now is to build something kind of like better than Binance in like the things that Binance already has, but also offer something that is fundamentally different for which CeFi users will look to move to DeFi that they cannot get in CeFi.
Right. Makes sense. And also, now that we've touched upon like users, more about Paradex, I also want to touch upon the team behind Paradex as well. How is the transition of the Starknet's transition from Cairo Zero to the latest Cairo version been,
Mhm.
and what were the major challenges and benefits that Paradex experienced during this upgrade?
Okay, so Cairo Zero was a pain in the ass to deal with. It was obviously it was a long time ago. It's highly
Yeah.
optimized, and so in that sense, it is a very efficient language, but it is not easy to kind of like understand and work with. But we made the decision maybe about a year ago that like, hey, we want our developers to learn Cairo because we believe that like this is an ecosystem we're committing towards, a stack that we're committing towards. So we need to learn this kind of like so I picked my best guys, I moved them to Paradex, and I said, hey, you got to learn this thing, and they've done that, and they've done that pretty well. Cairo Zero was obviously super efficient, but of course, like we are now moved to kind of Cairo One. And so the benefits are that obviously Cairo One is kind of the new things. You get the tooling, you get the community, you get all of these new things but the downside is the number of steps actually increased about 50%.
Increased. Yeah.
But with a bunch of optimizations, we were able to kind of keep it only at 50%. When we first rewrote the code, it was almost 5x. But in general, like I think the benefits are that hey, we now future proof. We don't have to worry about like half our stack being Cairo was zero,
Yeah.
half our stack being Cairo one. It's just like one seamless stack across one language across everything, and now we can kind of power forward and we can really scale this thing.
Right, exactly. Understood. That's pretty interesting about the Cairo steps itself. I just have like last two questions, and maybe I think we can end this off. But yeah, I just want to know about what would you say about to developers and traders and enthusiasts like looking to get involved with Paradex?
This is a very exciting time for us. If you are a developer, if you're a developer, in about a month or so, we should open up our testnet to so you can come and play around and build on Paradex chain. If you are a trader, if you're a depositor, you want to participate in our vaults and experience the full power of Paradex vaults, which I think is probably the most powerful primitive vault primitive in DeFi today. You should come and check it out and give us feedback on it. We're a very accessible team. And then XUSD, which is our native yield-bearing synthetic dollar, that will be launched in January. So if you're excited about something like Athena, then you should be very excited about this as well, because we now have basically an exchange, we have a blockchain, and we have a synthetic dollar, kind of everything super composable, kind of powering each other. So yeah, if you're looking to kind of get in the ground floor on the exchange in terms of building with us as a community, join our Discord. Holler at me on Twitter. I'm very happy to hear from the community, and also if they give feedback, we're very quick to address it as well.
Right. And just finally, for this whole Twitter space, I would just like to ask about looking at your whole roadmap. Which particular thing or what excites you the most about the Paradex roadmap for 2025?
Um, I'm excited about everything, but I
If you
am
just had to choose one.
yeah. If the one thing I'm particularly excited about. Well, I'll say two things, but one of which has already happened, in the sense that with the announcement yesterday, I think we were able to really articulate how this kind of like very big and bold and ambitious vision of exchange, blockchain, and native kind of synthetic dollar comes together. I think for the first time we were able to express it, but also it resonated very deeply with the community. And so with that, we've just seen an enormous amount of interest in the platform. And so now, of course, with that, we're able to sort of like build on that momentum and go forward. So I'm excited to kind of build on that momentum, right? So I'm not particularly excited about a product in that situation, but I'm excited for the momentum that we're seeing right now, and I'm looking forward to kind of grow it. On the product side, the product that I'm the most excited about is perpetual options, because I'll give you sort of a quick analogy, right? Let's say, so you understand perps, like I think and most of the
Yep.
audience, they probably understands perps. But if you think about how perpetual traders are effectively leveraged spot traders, right? Is basically they're people that are looking for leverage. So if you're trading Bitcoin, but I want, instead of buying physical Bitcoin, I want to participate in the upside of Bitcoin. I basically go and trade or perpetual, right? And so you can think of perpetuals as leveraged spot trading. Now, if I ask you a question, hey Akash, let's say if you're a perpetual trader, and I say to you, it's like, hey Akash, if you're trading perps, and as you know how perps work, if the price goes up, and let's say you're long, you win, but if the price goes down, you have to pay, right? But
Yep.
in either case, you're still paying funding, right? Because that's the funding rate. Now, what if I came to you and I say, hey Akash, if the price goes up, you keep the profits, but if the price goes down, you don't have to pay me the loss on it. If I said that to you, what would you say?
I'd be pretty happy.
You'd be happy, but you'd also
Yeah.
ask me, what's the catch,
Yeah.
right?
What's the catch?
Because if,
Yeah.
if I'm giving you a service like this, there has to be a catch. And so all I'll say to you is like, yeah, gosh, if you're used to paying a few bips in funding for leverage, how about for this extra service of not having to deal with downside, you pay me a little bit extra in funding, and let's call
Mm.
that extra funding insurance. Basically, that is what perpetual options is. So perpetual options is like futures trading, but instead of perpetual futures trading, when you're paying the funding rate, you pay a little bit more in funding, but don't have to deal with downside. And so I think this is kind of fundamentally new in crypto, but it also kind of like fits within the perpetuals framework. So a lot of perpetuals traders out there, if they're looking to, it's basically something like, hey, if the price goes up, great. If the price goes down, you don't get liquidated, right? So this is kind of revolutionary in that sense. So I'm very, very
Right.
excited. This product is going live today, actually, while we speak on mainnet, but it's in beta, and we'll open it up to the public in January. But this promise of like trade perps without liquidation, this to me is like a very powerful thing, and I'm super super excited about to tell the world what this is.
Thank you so much, Anand. I'm personally excited about Paradex and the whole roadmap, and also there's a lot more stuff. I think a lot more people gonna be reaching out to you after this whole time announcement and looking out
Great.
more cheeky tweets as well. And yeah, and I would really encourage all of the audiences to try out Paradex and also let us know how it's been and your experience as well. And if there's anything, feel free to contact Anand or me if there's anything else. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
my
very happy to.
my Twitter is FiddyBips1. It's FIDDYBPS1. Holler at me. Let me know if you guys think
Yep.
we can do something better. Always happy to take feedback.
Yep. Sure. Thank you so much, Anand. Thank you so much for joining in, and pretty excited and good times ahead for Paradex. Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, Akash.
Sure,
Bye.
sure. Thank you. Bye.